Namaste दोस्तों. Today I have created this video on a hot topic that is a residential house on lease will be costlier from 18th July 2022, isn't it? Actually, what happened? The GST department issued numerous notifications on 15th July and 13th July by virtue of the recommendation made in the 47th GST Council meeting. And under this notification, there are numerous changes that have been brought into force. One of them is that if you are a registered person and you obtain a property on lease for residential purposes, then you have to discharge the GST in addition to the rent. Suppose you pay 10,000 as a rent to any person for a residential unit. Additionally, you have to pay 18% under GST RCM. Okay. So let's discuss about in detail what is the provision, what is the amendment brought into the by this notification. चलिए देखते हैं. This is the amendment, that is residential house on lease will be costlier from 18th July 2022. Let's have a discussion. What is the amendment? Earlier, what happened by notification number 12 2017, that is the mega exemption notification. Earlier, what happened? Under this notification, service by of renting of a residential dwelling unit for use of residence earlier was exempted. Now, new line has been inserted, that is, except where the residential dwelling is rented to a registered person. In simplified manner, that is, if a registered person taken a property on lease and used as a residential purpose, then the registered person will not able to avail this exemption. And consequently, suppose if an unregistered person is taking a property on lease and for residential purposes, then he will be eligible for the exemption. Okay. Then important amendment. After eliminating the exemption scope from this notification number 12, they have inserted the notification in the notification number 13 by way of notification number 5 oblique 2022. What is the important update? That is, this new clause has been inserted to the original notification, that is serial number 5AA. What is the service? Service by renting of a residential dwelling unit to a registered person. And supplier of the services. Supplier of service means who is the supplier of services? Who is the owner of the property? Who render the service provider? Any person. He might be registered, he might be unregistered. Then recipient of the service is any registered person. Okay. Let's have an example. What is the change? Suppose Mr. X Limited, a registered property taken from Mr. X Limited, taken a property from Mr. Y. Mr. Y is an unregistered person. Clear? Mr. Y is an unregistered person. And that property is used for either for residential purpose or for commercial purpose. If that property is used for residential purpose, then GST under RCM need to be paid by Messrs X Limited. Okay. Or if the property is for the commercial purpose, then RCM under GST is not applicable. Mind it, only for the residential, not for the commercial purposes. And if Mr. X Limited paid GST under RCM, then he need to issue a self invoice under section 31. Clear? Next question. Next, Mr. X Limited obtain a property from Mr. Z, and Mr. Z is a registered person. Okay. And the property of Mr. Z, which is taken on lease by Mr. X, is used for either for residential purpose or for the commercial purpose. If it is used for the residential purpose, then GST under RCM to be paid by Mr. X, because he is the person. Or if the property is commercial purpose, then Mr. Z have to raise a tax invoice to Mr. X. And here Mr. X is not supposed to pay under RCM. He has to pay the amount to Mr. Z by way of forward charge raised by the Mr. Z. And Mr. Z, and in case of residential purpose also, while raising the invoices by Mr. Z to Mr. X for residential purpose, RCM invoice will be issued. RCM invoice. You know that RCM in section the invoice format, there is an option whether invoice covered under transaction covered under RCM Y or N. So Mr. Z, while raising the invoices to Mr. X, you have to raise a RCM invoice to Mr. X. Clear? That is the example of suppose of you are person and you are taking a property on rent or lease for residential use or non-residential use. Then next change. Suppose you have a property and you have let out to Mr. Y, who is an unregistered person. You have a property, you have registered, you as a registered person, you have a property, you have let out to a unregistered person, that is Mr. Y. Mr. Y property used for residential purpose, right? Residential purpose. Then, or either for residential or for commercial purposes. If Mr. Y is unregistered, he is a service recipient and unregistered, then no GST, because here this is an exemption. Here this is the exemption because the property is being property obtained by an unregistered person. And for commercial purpose, of course, the Mr. X should charge GST on Mr. Y as an unregistered, because B2C invoices need to be charged. Suppose Mr. Z, a registered person, because you are the property and your property has been taken on lease by Mr. Z, who is a registered person. Then what happened? If property used for either residential purpose or commercial purposes. If residential purpose, then GST to be discharged by whom? By Mr. Z, because he is the service recipient and you are the service provider. You are falling under the category any person, and Mr. Z falling under the category of service recipient, and who is liable to pay GST under RCM, right? Then if it is a commercial purposes, then of course, Mr. X will raise a GST invoice under on Mr. Z. And Mr. X, if let out property is residential, then Mr. X will raise RCM invoice on Mr. Z. So this is the major amendment. So hope you I am able to explain you regarding the notification, what is provided in notification number 4 and notification number 5. So in nutshell, अगर आपका कोई प्रॉपर्टी, यू हैव प्रॉपर्टी टेकन ऑन लीज, ओके, आप अगर रेंट पे कर रहे हो एंड यू हैव the service provider is an unregistered person, you have to pay GST. There is a major implication in a case where the property has been taken by the company on lease and provided to the employee. Here there is a major financial implication should be on the part of the company. Okay, and thank you for watching my channel, and keep subscribe my channel. Thank you.